Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those joining us from Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific Islands. My name is Paige, and I'm the Global Marketing Manager of API, and I'll be your host today. It's really fantastic to see so many attendees, both familiar and new. Thank you for joining us. As many of you know, the talent shortage in the data center industry has become a significant issue. Demand for skilled professionals is far outpacing supply, and all market indicators suggest this gap will continue to widen. Today's session is all about equipping you with the insights and strategies you need to navigate and thrive in this evolving landscape. It is my honor to introduce the speaker, Dean Kutsia, COO of API Group of Companies. With over 22 years of commercial experience in the data center and IT industry, Dean has a unique understanding of the challenges we face, and he will offer invaluable perspectives on how to tackle them. He's well recognized for his dynamic and determined personality and efficiency in tackling challenges and consistently achieving results. He has a wealth of experience covering diverse regions from Africa to Europe, Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific. Dean was also a co-founder of DX Platforms, a pioneer in modular data center technology. As the CEO, he led the company to rapid success, expanding from Australia into Asia and achieved listing on the ASX in just 8 short years. So now please sit back, enjoy the presentation. And Dean, thanks for waiting patiently. It's over to you.
No, thanks for that, Paige. And look, thank you to everyone today for joining us for this call. I think, as Paige mentioned, that the industry, I think, is feeling some serious pressure at the moment with regards to the talent and skills crisis that we're dealing with. And today's topic is going to cover that at length, particularly from EPI's perspective. Let's kick things off. So, for those of you who may not know much about EPI, I'm sure many of you on the call today are very familiar with us. But as a quick refresher, look, we've been in business for about 37 years now. The company was originally founded in the UK. We relocated our head office to Singapore in 1999, but the company's grown dramatically over those almost 4 decades. We've got 11 offices globally. We're across all major continents. We've also got a very large partner network who we work with closely. We're in over 130 cities and over 60 countries. So global coverage is something that we do certainly have. There's 3 main services that we're well known for. Predominantly audits and certifications, and also training. So on the audit and certification side, EPI provides a lot of audits and assessments of data centers that have either been designed or constructed, and we also complete operations assessments of those facilities too. And then, a lot of the people who are joining today will be most familiar as well with a lot of the training services that we provide. I'm sure we've trained many of you on the call today, and some of you that are obviously interested in the training that we do have to offer too. We've won numerous awards over the years, being in business as long as we have. We've achieved a lot of success in the industry over the years too. And a lot of our customers would be, companies that everyone would recognize. I think they're big names, not just in the industry, but large enterprise clients. We've provided all sorts of services to them over the years. And many of these are long-standing relationships that we've built up over decades. So before I jump into some of the industry research and forecasts, I think everyone who's on this call understands fully that the industry is going gangbusters. That's nothing new. You can't go a week without being provided with press releases or market research showing you that, the industry itself is growing at an astronomical rate. I think what's important, though, is to look at this data through the lens of the talent pool that we have. And how these forecasts and what this information is showing us and what sort of impact that will have on the talent pool going forward, not just today, but in 2 years and 5 years' time. So with that, I actually wanted to start with Cushman & Wakefield's Maturity Index. This is a great snapshot of the market in Asia Pacific. This is probably something that a lot of you may have already seen, but what's fantastic about this is the way that they segment the market. They're looking at the amount of capacity that has been deployed in specific cities and attributing or assigning them to a particular market segment based on that. So if we look at the right-hand side, the more mature markets, the powerhouse markets, are markets like Sydney, Tokyo, Shanghai, in comparison to Northern Virginia, which is, regarded as the largest in the world. Obviously, though, with Sydney, Shanghai, Tokyo, these are markets that are mature markets, and they're markets that are developed over a long time. It's same in Singapore, Hong Kong, Osaka. These are markets that have not sprung up overnight. They've been developed over, 15, 20 years, and there's been a gradual increase in the amount of capacity that's been deployed as we've moved gradually towards hyperscale, which has really exploded in the last 5 years. What this means, though, is that the more mature markets, these established markets, the powerhouse markets, have had skills that have developed over time. A lot of the people that are in the industry developed their skills and their background in these respective markets. And it started off when we were building, facilities for telcos or the enterprise market, and gradually shifted into co-location and our hyperscale facilities. What's really interesting, though, is when you look at the emerging and the developing markets, and in particular with the forecasts that will follow, is how many of these markets are having to play catch up, not just in terms of capacity, but in terms of skills development. And if you look at what those forecasts are predicting, conservative forecasts are showing from IDC a compounded annual growth rate of around 10% a year through to 2028. Now, that's significant when you consider that this excludes Japan, but includes China and Australia and a lot of the developed markets. That is a very, very high baseline for us to be working from. So compounded annual growth rates of 10% for established markets is significant. And in some of the emerging markets, we're seeing figures of over 20%. Again, this is something that a lot of you will be seeing out there, particularly when you're on the front lines. Those sentiments are shared by research and markets. They're also forecasting around 10.5% compounded annual growth rate, particularly in the co-location market. So the size of the market is increasing. It really is increasing. It's increasing dramatically. And again, what does this mean for the talent pool and the labor pool that we have to work with? Well, if you look at the development pipeline that is forecast for Asia specifically, there is a hell of a lot of capacity still to come online. So to provide a bit more of an explanation of what you're looking at here, this comes from CGSI Research and DC Byte. What they've done is they've compared early stage committed development and facilities currently under construction to capacity that's live. Other than Singapore, where we've seen a moratorium on construction and a real restriction on what projects could be developed, every single market is looking to double or even treble, in some cases, the amount of capacity that's currently available and online. And that is in every market. Some markets like Malaysia, you can see the amount of early stage development is astronomical, but those that have been committed to and even under construction are significant. And again, when you look at this, it's even occurring in developed markets like Japan and Hong Kong. So what this tells us is that the demand for skills is not going to decrease, it's only going to increase. And the areas where it's likely to increase the most is actually in those markets where there is a huge shortage of skills and talent right now, simply because these are emerging markets that have not had the time to develop the local skills required to support these sorts of facilities. This is also being driven predominantly by rack power densities, which are increasing. A lot of this is because of AI workloads, but this was already starting with hyperscale requirements. By 2027, we're forecasting kilowatt densities of around 50 kilowatts a rack. Those of you that are out there know that people are already talking about 80 to 100 kilowatt racks. So the amount of power that's going to be consumed and the size of the facilities that we need to construct to accommodate these sorts of workloads is only going to continue to increase. And this is not just in APAC. This is a global trend that we're seeing. It doesn't matter if it's Asia Pacific or Europe, the Middle East and Africa or the Americas. We see a similar trend line across the board. So this is global, and this is effectively the industry as a whole. And really what we're going to see is a continued acceleration of construction in the industry, given the demand, particularly for power and high density workloads. And that creates a problem because a lot of you would already be feeling this now, but it's something that is likely to actually continue to increase, because when you look at just the demand side of the equation, it's pretty apparent that, okay, well, we're building all these data centers. Clearly, we're going to need more people. And that is something that seems quite obvious. But there's a lot of underlying issues and challenges that the industry is also facing, which I'm going to run through, because when you combine both the development pipeline, but also some of the challenges that we are dealing with, it does actually present a serious case for the industry as a whole to start looking at what we're going to be doing to solve this particular issue. Now, we ran a global survey. Obviously, given the size of our partner network, the amount of customers that we have, we were able to get a diverse range of feedback, across a wide customer base. So this would include enterprise, it includes colo, people in the industry, consultants, all sorts. And what we're finding is that 55% of them have said they're struggling to retain staff. 64% said they were struggling to attract staff. And 42% said that staff were hired away in the previous 12 months. So if you take that into consideration, it's hard to find people, you struggle to retain them, and half of us are poaching each other's staff. So we've got an arms race that's currently underway for qualified people and talented people. But the issue is that we're currently sitting with a problem where a lot of people companies are starting to poach from each other in a desperate attempt to try and secure skills. Operational staff are also the most difficult to retain and attract, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail. But this is, again, in itself quite obvious. And I think it's supported by the fact that there's just so much capacity coming online, particularly in developing markets, that we need to try and find people to operate these data centers. But where are they actually going to come from? And a whopping 84% of respondents agree that we need to recruit from outside the industry. I think this has become obvious and apparent to everyone. Now, there's 10 key challenges that we've identified through this. And I'll run through them briefly. I think a lot of this some of you will relate to. At the moment, we're seeing an accelerated evolution in tech, particularly driven by AI and hyperscale. But it's really pushing the envelope with regards to, engineering and particularly cooling design. We're having to change the way we look at how we design data centers and how we're going to operate these facilities. These are new skill sets that are required, and it's going to require, a proactive approach to address that. The other major issue is the high turnover rates. It is a competitive market, and poaching has become frequent, which has just led to a massive increase, obviously, in labor rates and wages, which makes it very difficult for us to forecast and manage divisions, departments, companies in certain regions when you've got a constantly escalating and increasing cost of labor. The other issue is that there's a severe lack of experienced talent. And that's really simply because the industry growth has just outstripped the talent pool. We're building so many facilities that we've outstripped what labor is available to us. And unlike a lot of the more developed markets who are also dealing with the same problem right now, they're not excluded from this. But unlike developed markets where there's been time for knowledge to be gained and experience to be gained, there's been very little of that in the more developed or the developing or markets that are looking to establish themselves. And as a result, they're suffering the most with this right now. The other issue is remote work challenges, and that's from two perspectives. I think the first one is that, particularly with facilities, they require on-site staff. So you're always limited to people that are within the city or the region that you're in. The other is that remote work options have become attractive for, talented people in particular, those in commercial roles. And people want the option to either work from home a lot more or work from certain cities that they prefer to live in. And as a result, we're having to make adjustments to that too. Another key challenge is that the workforce is aging, and this is something that's going to be felt particularly in the more developed markets. A lot of the people that built this industry started off, as I mentioned earlier, building server rooms for enterprise clients and, telcos. The days of going into a building somewhere and fitting out a bit of space for an enterprise client who wanted to host their servers in their own building. Before we moved towards colo, that's how it was done. If you think about the people who've built the hyperscale facilities today, so many of them started off building smaller facilities, and they've burnt their fingers along the way. You look at a lot of people that are coming into the industry now, it could be graduates, it could be experienced people that are moving into the data center industry now. A lot of these guys are going straight into hyperscale projects. So very few of them have developed the expertise over the years and developed what they should have previously and learnt along the way. They're being thrown in the deep end from the word go. As the workforce tends to age out too, a lot of this is being driven by birth rates in many cases. We've got a shortage of youngsters that are coming through, and it's not just the data center industry that's suffering. There's just a shortage of people that are going into trades, and also, STEM. The other challenges that we're dealing with too are economic factors. Facilities need to run 24/7, and it's hard to staff these facilities 24/7. A lot of people don't like to work shifts. That has a huge impact on our ability to attract and retain staff long term. Globalization's having a huge impact on things too. We're seeing a massive consolidation in the industry, particularly with a lot of the larger operators that are trying to consolidate through a few locations with very high-level, top-level management. But the problem with that is cross-cultural communication, coordination across time zones is becoming increasingly challenging too. Regulatory pressures building, that's something that's set to increase. I think we're seeing with surely driven mostly by the amount of power that's consumed, but also concerns over cybersecurity, data protection acts. All this places constant pressure on operators because you've got ever-evolving regulations that often require specialized expertise. And this stuff can change quickly. Often you think you might have a couple of years, headway on some of these changes, but often that's not the case. It tends to be something that could be implemented relatively quickly. And government doesn't really understand the industry to the degree that it needs to when it makes some of these changes. So some of the pressure it can put on operations is astronomical. Education continues to remain a huge problem too. One of the problems that we do have is that particularly, the design and data center operations type education is quite limited. There's very little being offered by universities at the moment, or tertiary institutions. It's improving. It's improving. We're seeing more and more institutions looking at this and trying to figure out ways to address it, but we're a long way off from them being able to cover the gaps. The other major issue is that IT skills don't translate, and again, I'll touch on this in a bit more detail as we go through the rest of the webinar, but many people in the industry have tech backgrounds, but they're not operations, facilities, or design people. A lot of us have fallen into the industry, and I'd say most of us come from an IT industry for the most part. But again, those skills don't translate. There's a lot to learn, and it was easier to learn this when we were being thrown into smaller projects and could learn along the way. When you're getting thrown straight into a hyperscale project now, there's a lot more risk attached to it. Everything's becoming more complex as a result. If you consider how complex data centers are these days compared to what we were constructing even 5 years ago, and it's set to increase in complexity, particularly when you look at some of the newer approaches to cooling. We're having to figure out how we're going to operate these sites, design them, manage them. Things are becoming increasingly complex. And as a result, that also places more strain on the talent pool itself, because even though you might think you're fortunate you can hire someone who's got experience in the industry, the type of experience they got is also quite important. If you're hiring someone from a smaller operator and they've come from a traditional co-location facility providing retail co-location services into a hyperscale environment, it's a totally different kettle of fish. And that goes for, everyone in operations, engineering, consulting, all sorts. So all of this, presents the threat of downtime for operators in particular. But the industry as a whole, I don't think quite understands the extent of the risk that we run, particularly when it comes to human error. So there's a lot of research out there. There is a lot of research out there, and it varies from 40 to 85% of that downtime being attributed to human error. I think what you find, though, is a lot of the research often cites equipment failure as the reason for downtime. However, a lot of the reasons for that failure is often coming down to the way the site was being maintained and operated by people. Sometimes people push the wrong button, but a lot of the time it was actually just pure process or incorrect processes that were in place, or poor operations. So how do we deal with this? It sounds like it's all doom and gloom, and I think it does present a massive challenge for the industry as a whole. And it's one that the industry does need to address, and address quite aggressively. And there's a few ways to address it. And I think those that do are going to end up having a significant competitive advantage over those who don't, because the industry is not going to sort itself out. You can see surely, or just purely through the amount of demand for capacity that's being constructed, And given the challenges that I've outlined, there is no quick fix or quick solution for this. It's really going to come down to the industry as a whole addressing it, and down to individual companies trying to find a competitive advantage by focusing on talent and talent specifically. So how do we do that? Look, the first and most obvious one is that we need to hire talent from outside the industry. And as I mentioned earlier, telecoms, IT, and facilities management have probably been the most fertile hunting grounds for us for a long time. Most have come from those industries and moved into data centers. At some point, we fell into the industry, is what you often hear people say. The thing is, by bringing a lot of these people across, they still require a ton of cross-training if you're going to transition them into data center roles, and particularly specialized training as the industry becomes more specialized and the complexity of the data center starts to increase. The other industry sectors that should be looked at is engineering and manufacturing. Engineers and technicians have got a lot of experience when it comes to troubleshooting and maintenance. Again, you need to offer certifications so that their skills can be aligned with data center operations. But if you take someone who's an electrician or an HVAC specialist, these are the sorts of people who have got the requisite skills that would make for adequate operations staff, for example, and provided with the right training and guidance and environment, you're going to find good people. The other sector that's worth looking at is energy. There's been a lot of professionals that have looked at, obviously the power systems and energy management. Professionals are highly suited to the data center industry specifically. There was a lot of people that looked at particularly renewables as a massive opportunity for a long time. It remains one. But again, it's an industry that is very adjacent to data centers. And as a result, is a sector that is worthwhile considering. The other is construction, often one that I think is ignored, and one that probably should be highlighted more frequently, because a lot of these guys have a lot of experience with large infrastructure projects. We're seeing a lot of the larger operators now targeting people from the construction industry, particularly with regards to project management. But I think this is one segment that's been a little bit overlooked. Again, though, they would require, training to align their expertise with data center requirements specifically. We talk a different language in this industry. A lot of people that come into the industry don't quite understand why we design and build them the way that we do. And it takes a while for them to wrap their heads around that, which is why the training and certification is so important for these people. The last industry that's also worthwhile considering is logistics and supply chain. After significant cross-training has been provided to people from this particular industry segment, a lot of these guys are going to have the right sort of expertise and background with process optimization, complex operations. And again, if we consider how complex the data center itself is becoming, but also how we're starting to centralize the management of the facilities, particularly the larger operators that are having to manage facilities across multiple cities and regions now, people with this sort of expertise and background are actually going to be invaluable too. Another thing that could be looked at and should be considered, scholarships, internships, and apprenticeships. We're seeing a lot of this in the industry already. A lot of it has come through the EPI Data Center Futurist Scholarship that we're running. I mean, look, we've provided over $1 million worth of scholarship already to the industry as a whole. We've actually extended that now. We've topped it up and put another $1 million in. That has been budgeted for us to continue the scholarship program. It's been incredibly successful. We've received over 1,500 applications and trained over 1,200 people. But I think it's a drop in the bucket. It really is something that needs a bit more attention, particularly from larger operators, which many are looking at this right now. We're in conversations with many who are looking to either work with us or have got their own programs. And this is vital. And it could be done in multiple ways. It could be, financial incentives to students. It could be your own internship programs or apprenticeship programs offering hands-on experience. The others to also, give an opportunity to interns, see who's the strongest out of the intern groups and train them up, bring them in and train them up. Upskilling programs is something that we do want to look at too. This is something that many organizations and a lot of our customers are looking at. There's a lot of ways to approach this. The first is obviously with in-house training and certification. So providing staff with continuous learning is important. The industry is obviously going through significant changes right now from a design and an operations perspective, but it's accelerating at a speed that we haven't quite seen before. I mean, if you think about it from a technology point of view, the data center hasn't changed that much. We might be pumping more power into these facilities, and we've gotten cute with cooling tech over the years, containment systems and so forth. But what we're seeing right now, particularly with on-chip cooling and immersive cooling, we're seeing a huge shift in the way we're having to construct data centers. So continuous learning is going to become important, particularly for those who've got a lot of experience in the industry, but those who are also going to be coming in. This is why you also want to future-proof talent. You need to be looking at emerging tech and preparing employees for a lot of the changes that are coming to the industry. So cross-training for your teams is important, and how you manage those teams and that cross-training is equally important too, as is mentoring. You've got senior staff, as I say earlier, a lot of them are starting to age out, but senior staff do need to be paired with junior employees a lot more to try and bridge a lot of the skills gaps. I mean, a lot of the stuff is common sense, but a lot of it's not happening. And a lot of it just comes down to the sheer pressure that we're dealing with, trying to get projects up. Everyone feels like they're stretched thin at the moment, but this is something that needs to be a cognizant choice and a decision that's made internally, and something that is, I wouldn't necessarily say enforced, but actively encouraged. Shadowing programs are one of the best ways, particularly for operations people, to learn. The others through external learning opportunities, is sending them to conferences, workshops, and courses, providing access to online learning platforms. All of this stuff helps dramatically, because it's consistent training and ongoing training combined with experience and shadowing experienced people that develops people quickly. So it needs to be not looked as one or the other. You need to look at a holistic approach to dealing with talent. The other issue is obviously retention, as I touched on earlier. People are often reluctant to invest in training and certification and all sorts if they can't retain staff. So you need to look for ways to retain staff. And a lot of that simply comes down to development for the individual and comfort for the individual, that they can see a long-term future for themselves in the organization that they're employed in. And that can be done in numerous ways. There's career plans. You can help them develop, personalized career plans that align with your goals too. Certifications is an obvious one. If you're assisting them with the development of their education, their career, and they're certifying, a lot of that is a good reason for them to stick with their employers too. Leadership's an obvious one. People want to see, leadership and managerial opportunities where they're working, and running workshops for that assists dramatically. Regular assessments, which a lot of HR managers will be running already, but should obviously form part of as a key part of a retention approach. I think also important to highlight, and look, we take this quite seriously at EPI. We provide a free tool that's available from our website, which is called the Career Planning Tool. What this competence framework does, it actually allows anyone in HR or hiring managers or people who are managing teams to effectively assess the job roles of the people that they have either under them or that they're looking to hire. And you can see what skills are going to be required based on the role that they have. And that might align with some of the training that EPI provides, but it also highlights areas where they can focus their energy and attention, and where you can focus on helping them develop their skills. And that can either be done through some internal training, mentorship, or so forth. So a great tool and a great resource that I'd highly recommend everyone download and play around with. And look, if you've got any questions, we're always happy to run you through the value that it can actually offer you. The next obvious one is training and certification. Look, obviously EPI being a training company and one that provides certified training, this is an area where we're specialists in, but there's numerous advantages to providing training for your staff and putting them through that certification path. The big one is obviously that you're closing skill gaps. Being able to equip staff with critical skills is an important thing now, and particularly given, as I say, and I emphasize this a lot, the complexity in the data center environment is only increasing, and it requires specialization. So there are enormous skills gaps sometimes between people in the same teams, people that are in different departments but having to work together. A lot of those skills gaps do need to be closed. It's important too that if employers know that you're investing in them and the development of their skills, it helps to drive retention and their own internal and personal growth. It's a way to also identify future leaders. You can see which people are high performers, which people are, responding well to the training that you're providing, taking advantage of the opportunities that they're being given, helping the people around them to develop too, based off what they learn and, how they start to gain experience. All of this helps you identify key managers too. The other thing it does is obviously it boosts operational excellence. Downtime we highlighted earlier is a major concern and a growing concern, and should be. If you want to end up on a headline these days, have an outage. You're a national headline with an outage these days. So reducing human error is crucial. Improving the efficiency of operations equally so, given the fact that people are hard to come by. The resources that you have, you want to make sure you're getting as much from them as what's humanly possible. And the best way to do that is to, invest in them. The other is that it gives you a competitive edge. Everyone's struggling for people. Everyone is going to struggle for people for a long time. This isn't something that's going to resolve itself quickly. However, if you are retaining staff, if you're investing in people, if you're ensuring that the people that you're taking on are being trained and certified accordingly, this is going to provide you with a competitive edge, and for numerous reasons. Not just when it comes to reducing downtime or having an efficient team. It's something that affects the bottom line to a huge degree, and not just as a top line when we're looking at the cost of salaries, or the cost of employment. When we're looking about the actual efficiency that can be provided through staff who are working as a team and have been adequately trained. So with that, we'll touch on EPI's training. Look, again, most of you who are on this call are very familiar with our training. Again, a lot of you would have already been trained by us or putting your staff through our training. What I wanted to focus on was more how our training aligns particularly with today's topic. So how does the training solve some of the issues that many of you are dealing with regards to the talent shortage or the skills crisis that we're dealing with at the moment? And where do these courses actually fit in, and how could they be positioned from that perspective? So this is our data center training framework. What I'm going to run you through first is our foundation certificate. Now, this is a 2-day course. It's the data center foundation certificate that really is aimed at someone who's new to the industry. Now, often when we think of certification or training, we're always thinking about technical training for people. But what's required at the moment is training for people who are new to the industry overall. There's a lot of people who are in commercial roles. Think someone in finance or someone from logistics, someone who's not necessarily a technical person within the industry or technical person within the company itself. That doesn't really know the first thing about the data center or the data center industry. A lot of these people, they tend to struggle at first because they struggle to understand, why things are done a certain way, or, even something as simple as what a vendor is or what a design consultant does. This provides them with a solid groundwork and a firm understanding of what the industry actually is, the nuts and bolts, and how it goes together. So extremely valuable as an onboarding course for both technical and commercial people alike, and particularly people who are new to the industry. And given that we need to hire from outside the industry, not just technical roles, but commercial roles, this does actually have a lot of value to offer. The other courses, the design build courses, obviously everyone knows the CDCP very, very well. The Certified Data Center Professional is a 2-day course. It's a technical foundation that we provide, particularly with regards to the design and construction of data centers. Everything we do is based on best practice standards. All our training is built around a best practice approach. And what you'll find is when you hire people from outside the industry, often don't understand why we do things the way we do things. I've got a design construction background myself. I built a business in Perth where engineering skills tend to be those, that have a mining background. You're not hiring people that have a data center background. So you could get someone with 15, 20 years engineering experience, and he's a fantastic electrical engineer, but he just doesn't understand why we're investing to the degree that we are in power systems, or why the sorts of redundancy we're chasing are required. It just seems like such overkill. At the same time, too, terminology and language is just not where it needs to be. They don't quite understand, the industry, the nuts and bolts. So the CDCP is not going to teach someone how to be an electrician. It's not going to teach an electrical engineer how to be an electrical engineer. But what it's going to do is explain to an electrical engineer or an electrician why we do things the way we do things, why the best practices are the best practices. When they're sitting in a room with a vendor or a consultant, they're talking the same language. But just as important, they're talking the same language as their colleagues. everyone sings from the same hymn sheet, because if everyone's doing things based on best practice standards, and most of the industry there's only so many ways to design a data center and operate a data center. If everything's built around best practice standards, giving people a foundation in those best practice standards is one of the best gifts you can give, particularly new entrants. And this is why this course has been so valuable, not just for new entrants, but also a lot of people who are in the industry that haven't necessarily been exposed to it to this degree. The next course up, following CDCP certification, is the Certified Data Center Specialist. That's a 3-day course. We start to build on top of the CDCP, and we go into a bit more detail, with regards to the data center itself. We look at things like battery sizing and, specifying fire suppression systems and so forth, the real nitty-gritty. This is fantastic for people who, are having to deal with vendors and consultants that become great sparring partners for them. At the same time, too, fantastic for a lot of junior consultants who are starting to move into the space, pre-sales people who might be new, come with an IT background, and they want to understand a little bit more about how to spec up, builds for their clients and so forth. Once you've gone through the CDCS, the CDCE is the most technical course that we offer. It's a 5-day course. We actually look at a business case, or look through numerous business cases, where we run through the project life cycle of a data center. So everything from site selection right the way through to how we design, we approach, we project manage, and so forth. So very intense. It's a tough 5-day course aimed at people who are relatively experienced and have gone through the certification process, but has a lot of value to add to inexperienced and experienced alike. So offer the Certified Network Cabling Design professional course. Look, there are a lot of cabling courses out there. The big benefit behind the CNCDP is obviously we're focusing on the data center quite heavily, and cross connection, and particularly with SDN networks and all sorts these days, cabling is becoming something that is increasingly difficult, for companies to manage and train people up. We offer specialized training specifically. Is that we offer our maintenance and operations courses. Again, and as I highlighted earlier, operations teams are under the most pressure when it comes to hiring people with experience, and this is probably the one segment of the industry where we're going to need to be the most aggressive when it comes to hiring people from outside the industry and training them up quickly. You need local teams, people who are prepared to work 24/7, and this is an area that requires significant investment and considerable, consideration, I think, from managers and hiring managers over how you're going to get your people trained up. So to touch on them briefly, the CDFOS, the Facilities Operations Specialist, that's a 3-day course. That's aimed at people who are on the tools. So think of the guys that are racking and stacking, and the guys that are working on the floor, the guys that are having to maintain equipment. That's who it's aimed at. The CDFOM is the Facilities Operations Manager. That's aimed more at people who are managing teams of people who are on the floor. Think more processes, procedures, so forth. Again, a lot of people coming into these roles come with facilities management backgrounds and are fantastic, but they don't necessarily have data center specific experience. So the CDFOM for them is fantastic, because it's going to help them plug a lot of gaps and help them understand why we operate facilities the way we do. The other one, which is becoming increasingly important, the CDSS, which is the Environmental Sustainability Specialist. This emphasizes how we operate the facility from a sustainability perspective. This is obviously a growing concern. A lot of people, are particularly with ESG reporting requirements, governance requirements, a lot of clients a lot of our clients that are going into, facilities that a lot of our customers operate, they want to understand what sort of sustainability initiatives are in place. This assists operations teams with not only operating the facility in a sustainable fashion, but in how they actively report this up the chain, so that information can be shared not just with their own management, but with clients who have a requirement for it. We also have our risk-based courses. There's a Certified Data Center Risk Professional. This course is ideal for people who are having to engage in project management, or if you're having to justify a business case, either the expansion of a site, replacing current infrastructure, really come in handy. The Certified Data Center Migration Specialist is a blessing. I think for any of those who are on the call today who've ever been through a migration, know that these are tough as nails. Your first couple are really difficult, and if you've ever been through one, you know how hard and challenging they can be. And given the amount of capacity that's being moved into particularly newer facilities that are being constructed, and it's typically newer facilities that are being constructed that are having to hire newer people, getting people through this particular course is going to be a lifesaver, even if they're not necessarily managing the migration themselves, just so that they understand what their clients are going through and whoever is managing that migration is actually going through when they need to manage what are often very complex projects. The last of the courses that we cover are the standards and compliance courses. Look, EPI is obviously the largest certification provider for TI 942 standard. We're also providing ISO certifications and DCOS certifications. The CDCP is required to do the CTDC, which is the TI 942 design consultant course that we offer. That is a requirement to do the internal auditor and then the external auditor courses. If you want to know how to design a data center based on TI 942 best practices, this is the path that you want to go down. This is a fantastic development path, particularly for consultants, but also for operators. You know, if you're building your data center to the TI 942 standard and you're looking to certify it, which I hope most of you are, then this particular course is fantastic for a few key people internally to have gone through so that you actually fully understand and appreciate the value that the standard has to offer your organization. Some of the benefits that the training provides. Look, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we're aligned with best practice standards, TI 942 and ISO. And as I said, staff talk the same language. That's probably one of the biggest benefits that you'll get from this. It's the best way to get people up to speed, singing from the same hymn sheet. It's very practical training. And it's great to upskill new entrants, as we've obviously covered. And it's a good way to provide a competitive advantage too. You know, we're often finding that a lot of our certifications are a requirement for consulting companies that are perhaps bidding on projects. Customers want to see that a certain number of staff are carrying relative industry certifications. And as a result, those that do have them have got a competitive advantage when they're submitting bids. On the accreditation and examination, look, we work with Exxon. Exxon's a European-based company that is a third party providing the certification. So when you can complete an exam with EPI, we're not printing out a certificate in the kitchen. In the back, we're actually having you go through a proper, accredited process through Exxon in Europe. Why we use Exxon? Look, it's global. They're totally independent and impartial. They operate under an ISO accreditation scheme. And they focus purely on the ICT and the data center industry, and they've certified over 2 million people. So we've got a good relationship with them, and it's gone well. With regards to the courses, the way we deliver it, it's done, there's obviously the training. We provide you with an ebook, and then there's an exam that's completed after you finalize the training. We're delivering the courses in 14 languages, which you can see on the screen now. All the major languages, we cover most of the courses. We're adding Thai and Bahasa to the list. So from 2025, a lot of our courses will also be offered in Thai and Bahasa, and we're looking to increase the languages that we deliver some of our courses in. So that's something that is progressing nicely too. There's 3 main delivery options for EPI's training. There's the ILT, which is instructor-led training. This is live training in a classroom environment, physical training. There's the virtual instructor-led training, which is live instructor training just delivered over in a virtual environment through video call. And then there's TOD, which is the training on demand platform from the EPI Academy. This gives you 12 months access to the course that you've chosen, or the courses that you've chosen, and you can go through them at your own pace. So the fantastic thing about this is that if you don't have the opportunity to pull staff off site to send them for 2 to 3 days worth of training, we can actually have them go through the training on demand, the TOD, which allows them to do it at their own pace and when they've got some time. So a little easier for you not to have to rip a whole lot of people off site all the time too. Why would you choose EPI? Well, look, we are the first and the largest. We've been around for a long time, but we were the first to really train the way we are training today, and the proven training programs that have delivered results with the certifications being recognized globally now. We are a data center expert. We're not an events company. We're guys that have actually designed and built data centers. We audit and certify facilities. Our trainers spend a hell of a lot of time going through data centers across the world. So our trainers are exposed to new designs, new ways of operating sites. We're conducting obviously operational audits and technical assessments. So the trainers themselves are not just trainers; they're also auditors and conducting technical assessments of the data centers that are being built. So they're current; they're seeing things that are happening right now, and that bleeds through into the training that we not just deliver, that we develop too. We're vendor neutral, so we're completely independent. It always means that our content is objective. There's obviously the independent accreditation through Exxon. Development methodology for our courses has followed, a strict design framework, and we've included a lot of real life examples into the content. So this provides a very effective learning experience, and it's very relevant to the industry with practical application. The international standards, as I've already touched on, obviously, we're focusing on those specifically for the training. And we've also got a fantastic track record. Look, being in the industry as long as we have, there's a lot of proven success at this point. And as I said, with our large partner network, we're able to deliver our training almost everywhere in 3 formats. So with that concludes the presentation. I wanted to leave a sufficient time for some questions. So we've got about 12, 13 minutes if there are any questions. We can jump into that now, Paige. We can conclude here with an answer.
Question is, what impact do you foresee AI and automation have on the future of data center workforce?
Oof. I mean, that's something we could talk about for hours, but I think in short, the immediate impact it's going to have is it's going to force a change in how we design the data center facilities themselves. We're already starting to see that. A lot of the clients that we're talking to at the moment are all pretty concerned about how they're going to address this issue. So the immediate impact, particularly from our industry, is going to be design changes required to accommodate what's effectively high density workloads. And with that is, I suppose, the approach that we end up using to train people to deal with this, what that's coming. So that'll be the biggest one. I mean, look, there's the obvious ones where the amount of capacity required is just growing astronomically. Actually hits, I think we'll find that the compounded annual growth rate, particularly in Asia, will be higher. That's being driven by AI.
That's another question. The shortage of technical expertise in the data center industry could be due to salary offered, which is not being in line with the professional skills and working experience. So what are your views on this?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, look, I think for the most part, engineering skills in general tend to be quite well paid. And when we look at what day rates are in the industry right now, they're quite high. I think it depends what market you're in to some degree. And I think employers are also going to have to come to terms with higher wages that are probably going to need to be offered to retain talent. The reason why staff are being poached with the kind of ease that there are is because, as I mentioned earlier, there is a bit of an arms race for skilled people. But I wouldn't necessarily say that the data center industry's salary ranges are low. If anything, they're actually quite high. It's one of the reasons why the industry is becoming quite attractive to people in other industry sectors, and they're coming into the data center industry. I think where it's still a little more challenging is with younger people who are coming into the industry, and salaries for them perhaps not where they would like them to be. But I think for the most part that the industry is paying quite well as it is, and likely salaries are going to have to increase to continue to attract people from other industry sectors, but also to retain staff. So demand for skills will drive wages and salaries, just like they do in any other market. The data center industry is no different. So market will react the way it reacts. So.
Okay, another question. This participant is asking about job opportunity for someone with CDCP and CDFOS certification, but does not have any prior data center experience, particularly in Jakarta.
Sure. Look, there are opportunities at the moment with all the large operators. Many of them are looking to launch their own internships. They already have them in place. They've got scholarship programs of their own that they're looking to develop. So I think people who are looking to break into the industry need to take heart from the fact that a lot of the larger operators and people in the industry are actively looking to take on graduates and people who are new to this field. So it really comes down to polishing up the CV, get a few certifications under the belt to show that you've got some sort of technical understanding of the industry that you want to go into, and shop your CV around. You shouldn't struggle to find something given the shortage of talent that we're dealing with right now. And most of the larger operators and established companies in this industry are actively pursuing people of all skill levels right now. So I would say that be a little more positive. There's plenty of opportunity out there, particularly in Jakarta. Jakarta has seen astronomical growth in the last 5 years in particular, and it's probably the one market that EPI has seen a lot of our clients complain endlessly about a shortage of people and talent. So not a hard market to find work in.
It's about the data center risk professional. Can the person get certified for the risk professional without the data center foundation?
Yeah, you don't need the certificate, though. You won't need the data center DCFC for it. We would recommend you go for the CDCP, though. Having the CDCP will provide you with a strong technical foundation, and the CDCP really should be looked as an entry point for most of the certifications that we offer, simply because it will provide you with such a strong foundation with all the certifications and the training that we offer. So always recommended.
Thanks, Dean. We have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to speed it up a bit.
Sure.
Yeah. The next question is, if we fail in the first exam attempt, are we required to resit and attend the training again? And how about the cost?
No. So if you fail the exam, you can take the exam again. You have to purchase another voucher through either your partner that you acquired the training from or from EPI, and you can take the exam again. So there's no need to reset the course.
Thanks, Dean. Apart from talent pool, what are other challenges data center construction industry faces?
Biggest one's obviously capital. Capital is obviously constrained, particularly in certain markets. It's easier to raise money in a place like Japan or Australia than it would be in a country like Vietnam, for example, that presents other sorts of challenges. So that would be one of the biggest obstructions to it. That is outside of utilities. Power is a problem everywhere right now. Doesn't matter which market we're in. Power is a huge concern. We're seeing a restriction on the construction of data centers in a lot of markets now, particularly developed markets, even in the US. And that's simply because data centers are creating so much stress for the power grid and the utilities networks that a lot of states and countries and cities just don't want them. That's not the case everywhere, and something that will resolve itself over time. It's just one of those things we're going to have to work through. So those would be the three key things. Outside of talent, it's capital in certain markets, and then access to utilities in the markets where we want to build.
Can you show or tell us the standard manpower or organization chart required to operate a data center?
Oh, that's a very complicated question. I think there's always a best practice approach when it comes to managing a facility, but so much of the way that you construct your management team needs to be based on, what sort of facility you're operating and how your organization operates to a large degree. A co-location facility or an enterprise facility is going to be managed quite differently to a hyperscale facility or a facility that's, constructed to run, an ISP's little server room, for example. So it's always different. It depends on the business, the organization, the type of facility that you're running. The best thing I can recommend is that you invest in and spend as much time wrapping your head around understanding what are best practice standards. Look towards standards like the DCOS, the Data Center Operations Standard, which will provide you with a solid framework on the areas that you should be focused on when it comes to operating a data center. And from there, you'll be able to identify what people you need or what roles you would need to fulfill. So a good example for that with the operations assessments that we conduct audits, when we conduct audits on operations for our clients, often those assessments will turn up areas where customers are strong and weak, and those are often related to skills. So if you focus on best practice standards and a standard like the DCOS standard, that'll give you a strong foundation to build on from there. And then your org chart is inevitably going to end up being based on what your business requires and the type of facility that you're managing. I hope that helps. If you've got a question about that, look, we'd be happy to run through some of these offline too. That's not a problem. So if anyone's got any questions today and they need a little bit of assistance, please reach out to Paige or myself, and either one of us, or we can get one of our salespeople to jump on a call with you and run through these things in more detail too.
Next question is, does one require an engineering degree in order to be certified in data center design or audit?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So even sorry, for the data center design, the audits, the standards and compliance courses, or the design build courses?
Design and audit.
Oh, no. So look, none of our courses require a degree. Not at all. I mean, look, we've got salespeople who go through the CDCP courses and the CDCS courses, for example. So there's no requirement, salespeople without degrees, I should emphasize. So there's no requirement for a degree for any of the courses that we offer. Again, none of the training that we provide is going to replace an education. We're not going to teach you how to be an engineer or, how to be an electrician. What we're going to do is we're going to provide you with best practice guidance with regards to the industry and then to different levels of complexity based on the experience that you got and the level of certification that you're looking to achieve.
Thanks, Dean. Next is a very short question. What is the process to enroll to the CDCS when you have the CDCP?
Oh, you can reach out to one of our partners, or you can reach out to EPI directly, and we'll be able to assist you with it. You can either do it as a TOD through the EPI Academy, or you can attend one of our classes, either one of the virtual instructor-led classes. We schedule them globally throughout the year, and then also we run some live classrooms too, which we can schedule. So just reach out to us and we can assist you with it. No problem there.
Okay, very good. Next question is, data center consume large amount of power usage. Recent news is that major players like Google are looking into nuclear as the next power source. What is your opinion?
Has to go that way. I've felt that for a while. I don't think that the renewable push that everyone has been aggressively advocating for was realistic with the power loads that we're looking at before AI really started to kick off in the last 12 months, even with hyperscale power requirements. I just don't see any other way long term. When we look at the density requirements for some of the newer facilities and the size of these facilities, we're talking about, EPI is assessing facilities that are over a gigawatt in capacity now. The amount of power that's required is only going to increase. Grids can't handle it. I don't think solar and wind turbines are going to get the job done anymore. We're going to have to look at nuclear. So, yep, I agree fully. I think that's the way it's going to go long term. Again, it's going to come down to regulation, whether or not a lot of the local regulators and countries will allow the development of nuclear power for it. But countries that do, it's likely to provide a competitive advantage for themselves in this particular industry, at least.
Have a question from a lady. She's asking whether we can design and customize the 8-day DC training course for their engineers.
Yes, we can. So we do this quite frequently for a lot of our clients when they're looking to train a large contingent of people internally. We can customize the training to suit your particular requirements, particularly with the operations training. Everyone, particularly the larger operators, they don't want to send their staff to training, and we undo a lot of the good work that they may have already done. So we do align our training quite closely with what our clients require. As long as it stays within best practice standards, we can provide some guidance, but we can work with you on that. We can also help you develop training plans for your people too. So, what sort of training they should go on, how you might want to structure it, what sort of material we can add to it. So we can certainly help with that by all means.
Which certification is more in demand in the market? Data center design certification based on the TIA 942 or ISO 27001?
Look, ISO is obviously going to continue to gain traction over time, but the TIA certification is still, I think it's the last stats were about 78% of the facilities that are being constructed globally are being constructed either with TIA certification in mind or by people who have followed the TIA standard to some degree. Remember, TIA is a far more encompassing standard than some of the other guidelines that are out there. It includes things like site location, security, network. It's not just power and mechanical. So I think overall, given how comprehensive the TIA standard is, it's going to be the go-to for a while yet. ISO no doubt will chip away at it, but I think it's one of those things where a lot of it's often dictated by clients. Clients feel a lot more comfortable when there's a recognized certification. ISO obviously recognized, but some of the ISO certifications are not quite where they need to be, particularly from a data center perspective. So I think we're still a way away from ISO being a standard that we could say, okay, that's sufficient enough. The TIA standard's got a long way to go still.
Experienced talent increasingly being retired. Is there professional documentation or handover to help companies with this problem? Can training be a solution?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's obviously a huge problem when experienced people retire. They leave a massive hole in any organization. If you lose anyone that's been working for you for a long time or someone with a lot of experience, you're not going to be able to walk into a supermarket and buy their experience off the shelf like you could a can of beans. This is why knowledge transfer is so important, and why it's important to have senior people leading younger people as much as possible, particularly when it comes to mentorship and so forth. I think companies need to take a proactive approach internally to try and address this, because it is a growing issue, particularly in developed markets. Like I mentioned, places like Japan and Australia and even Singapore, a lot of the guys that built the industry are starting to move into retirement now. But training does resolve a lot of those issues. And it's also important to remember that a lot of the people who built this industry and the best practice standards that we adopt today have come as a result of what a lot of these guys have done over the years. We've learned how to build data centers because of the way a lot of these older, more experienced people have been building data centers over the years. So a lot of the training, the standards, the best practice approaches that we use all comes by default through what these people have learned. And that's why it's important to send people on training like the training EPI offers, because if we're basing things on best practice standards, there is a knowledge transfer inherent already in what we're providing to everyone when they take the training. And that's important to emphasize. I can't emphasize it enough. Having everyone talk the same language, best practice approach, doing things by the book and understanding why we do things a certain way is half the battle. The rest just comes down to the own individual's ability, what they learn along the way, and what skills they had outside of the training we provided.
Well, thanks, Dean. Another participant is asking whether we could run our training program at their local facility in Brunei.
Yes, we can. We can.
And so the minimum number of participants.
It's normally 8. We tend to, depends on the course. So some of the more complex courses, or the courses that require a large time commitment, say 3 days plus, could be fewer attendees, but generally it's 6 to 8 is the minimum we'd be looking for to run dedicated classes. We do them often and frequently, so it's not unusual at all. And then we fly in a trainer. So Brunei is easy enough for us. We've got a bunch of people in Malaysia.
Very good. Next question, yeah. Does EPI have a view on what is the current data center headcount and what increased headcount and thousands is needed to support the 10 to 20% CAGR figures being quoted?
Yeah, hard to say. We don't have a head count. I don't have that information on hand. What I can say is that the workforce is likely going to have to almost triple. And you can see it just with the development pipeline, but also the specialization that we're starting to see in the size of the facilities. If you look at the pure number of data centers, we looked at the number of facilities, but you actually got to look at the amount of power that's being consumed. If you assume roughly you need 1 person per megawatt, and then you got to run them on shifts, and that's not including security and all the rest, the size of the operations teams is increasing dramatically. The other thing to remember too is that a very experienced person is going to be able to get a lot more done and a lot more efficiently than 2 or 3 inexperienced people. But if you're having to hire from outside the industry and you're hiring inexperienced people, not only do you have to train them, you need to make sure you've got a few more people around in the event that 1, they don't work out, 2, they take a little while to find their feet, and 3, they're not going to be as efficient as someone with experience. So I think the headcount is going to need to increase dramatically, and it's something that a lot of particularly people in senior management roles need to be cognizant of. Your employee budgets are probably undercooked. I think we all know this, but it's something we need to accept a little bit. You're going to need to take on more people.
Another question, Dean, is how do we assess the skill gaps in our current team and determine the right training solution?
So look, again, EPI can assist with this, where we can run through, we can assist you with the skills assessment. We've got the career planning tools and the documents that I showed you earlier available on our website. That's a good place to start. But what I'd really recommend is reach out to us. We can get one of our salespeople onto a call with you. Let's understand where you think the gaps are. And if we can understand your business a little better, we'll be able to lend some of our expertise to provide some guidance and insight on potentially where you can address some of the gaps that you have. The one thing we do notice, and I would want to, mention this to everyone who's either listening to this now or watches this later, is that often we find that, particularly when we conduct audits, clients don't know where the gaps are until after we've conducted an assessment. And it's only after we've conducted that assessment and we can actually show them where those gaps are does the penny drop. So this is why it's important to sometimes consider external advice, a fresh set of eyes. We can come in, we can have a look for you, we can conduct an assessment for you, and then we can tell you where the gaps are. And then we can assist you either with training programs or provide you with some guidance on how you can resolve those issues. And then it just comes down to your own, budget and plan going forward on how you would actually execute on that. So my suggestion, look, reach out to us. We can hop on a call and we can run through it with you. Be happy to.
Okay, thanks, Dean. The next question is on Riza. Aside from trainings, not many are exposed to the new technologies such as liquid cooling, immersion cooling, and managing huge power requirements. How do we get hands-on experience in this area?
This is a tough one because, the problem is, and it's a chicken egg scenario at the moment with this, we've got clients requesting assistance and additional training, particularly around new cooling. It's kind of the beta versus VHS argument with immersive versus on-chip, for example. We don't know which technology wins out yet either. So it's difficult to say. I think a lot of it's just going to come down to those who are career focused need to look for roles with operators who are building hyperscale facilities or likely to adopt this sort of technology. Those who are looking to operate or maintain these sorts of facilities, it's just going to come down to trying to stay relevant with what training is available as the training is gradually adjusted to accommodate new best practice standards and staying on top of standards themselves. That would be the best approach that we could really recommend at the moment. But other than that, it's a tough one. I don't think there's a short-term solution for it. It just comes down to exposure.
Thanks, Dean. There's quite a number of questions about the validity of our certificates.
Sure, and a good one. I think given the fact that we discussed changes to technology that are coming, that's a very, very good question and something that, look, we're very aware of. I think it's important to emphasize, and this is one of the reasons why EPI has a recertification process. Every 3 years, we require people to recertify. It's because we actually update and refresh our material every year. And again, it's also important to stress that a lot of our trainers and the people that assist us with the development of our course material are auditors who are conducting audits and assessments of the data centers that are being constructed all over the world. Now, remember, we're conducting TIA assessments for the design and construction, and then we're also conducting operational audits. So we're at the forefront of seeing what's coming. We're often ahead by a couple of years because we're working with clients when they're going through the design stages of their sites. The guys that are providing the training and also helping us develop the training are obviously exposed to it at a very, very early stage. And as a result, we're able to keep our training very current. So that's one thing to bear in mind. The other is that because we've got that kind of exposure, and it's what separates us a lot from some of our competition, is the fact that because we go through regular refreshes of the content, it's always current and it's applicable for what's required from a general perspective. We are looking to develop more specialized training for electrical and mechanical requirements specifically. That's something that will likely be coming in 2025. We've provided some specialized training for some of our clients that are electrical and mechanical focused. The big issue is not so much power at the moment. A lot of it's cooling, so it's mechanical. That's where a lot of the confusion is right now. But I think the industry itself needs to settle a little bit, and then the training follows. And I don't think there's a clear indication yet which way exactly the industry is going to go. I think everyone's got an opinion on which way it goes, particularly from a mechanical design perspective. I mean, to me, I'm assuming on-chip likely wins out here, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see a little bit. But from EPI's perspective, everyone that can rest assured that, look, there's constant development of the material and the development is being completed by people who are overseeing the design and construction of data centers around the world from very early stages on. So if there's changes coming, we see them, and we see them quickly, and we can make adjustments accordingly. And that's one of the reasons why the certifications that we offer have as much value as they do these days, and why so many clients require it of consultants and operators, that they have a certain number of staff with our certifications on hand.
Okay, the next question is from an attendee who's working with a construction company which is building data centers in Indonesia. He has the CDCP. What should the next certification? What is the next certification for him to become a data center operator or get on the data center operation team?
So if he wanted to move into operations, obviously our operations courses would be a good place to start. I would look at the CDFOM, so facilities management, so he understands the processes and procedures. Should also consider the CDCS, so the Certified Data Center Specialist. The CDCP is a great technical foundation, but the CDCS is going to go into quite a bit more detail on how to actually size up, the different components within the facility itself, and give you a far better understanding of how the facilities are actually designed and built to a large degree, and why you'd specify certain equipment the way you would. And that will actually lend itself quite well to a lot of the operations training itself. So if you consider, for example, sustainability training, so much of it is built around or based on the design of the data center and how efficient it is with regards to power utilization and cooling. It lends itself well to the design build courses, because it teaches you how to build the stuff. So they're both very handy to have. I would recommend CDCS and the operations training in that case.
Yeah. Next question is, do you provide IT course for data center facility engineers who have a background in electrical engineering degree?
We have got some IT training that we offer. It's available. You'll be able to get access to, you'll be able to see it on our website. If you refer to that, you'll be able to see what courses we offer. We are a data center focused business though, so it's predominantly data center training that we focus on. But we do have some IT courses that are obviously quite well aligned with the data center industry, so to speak.
Okay. Well, next question. Once we enroll into an online training, can we access the TOD's training as well?
Look, if you attend, if I understood the question correctly, if you attend the VILT, the Virtual Instructor-Led Training, you don't have access to the TOD training too. If you purchase the TOD course from EPI, though, you've got access to it for a year, and you can access it at any time. It's effectively a streaming platform for the content.
Okay, this is a question about certification. The person already have a CDCP and want to take the CDCS. After achieving the CDCS, is it necessary to retake CDCP again?
No. So if you've got your CDCS, there's no requirement to retake the CDCP or recertify for CDCP. In fact, if your CDCP is expired, you can take the or if it's within 6 months, you can actually take the CDCS as a way to upgrade and recertify into CDCP. So if you're CDCS, there's no need to recertify CDCP.
Thanks, Dean. Next question is, which course is best to start for a graduate engineer aspiring to work and manage data centers?
I would recommend the CDCP as a standard entry point for anyone who wants to work in this industry. And then if it's operations roles in particular, I would then look at the operations courses that we offer. But you would get the most immediate value from the CDCP, because it's going to help you put the puzzle together and give you a good, solid, strong framework that you can build on from there. So always recommended to graduates, technical graduates who are looking to enter the industry.
Okay, this is a question. Can you recommend us to DC vendors or operators for upcoming opportunities?
No, look, we can't assist with that. But I think look, best bet is the traditional path: job boards, LinkedIn. They're all looking to hire. So right now, there's a lot of opportunity in almost every city in the world in this space. Reach out to them directly. We don't actively assist with recruitment, though.
Okay. There's next question is this person said there's a sudden growth in DC. Do you think it is over expansion?
In some markets, I mean, that's the case in some markets, but it's always been like that in this industry. For the last 20 years, there's been a glut of construction, oversupply, and then that space is consumed, and then there's a massive period of undersupply. And there's no doubt that there's some markets that are a little hot, some that are, still highly underserviced. But you look in some markets like Japan, for example, or in Northern Virginia, you build a data center, that space is sold before you're opening the doors. In other markets, it's a little more difficult. So it's a broad question, and it's one that is, consistent with what we've seen across the industry as a whole, where there tends to be a period of oversupply and then undersupply. I think in certain markets, there's unlikely to be an oversupply for a while. And that's not because there isn't capital or companies looking to construct. It's either an issue with land and access to utilities and power to actually build them. The biggest issue is access to the power required to construct these sites. It's not that the demand isn't there for it. There are some markets, though, particularly the emerging and developing markets, where it's a little more tricky. And that's because access to capital is either restricted or land ownership issues can complicate ownership, or land ownership issues complicate shareholding structures and so forth. And then the big one is that in some markets there has been, I'd say, perhaps a little overinvestment. But I'll give everyone a good example. Everyone thought there were too many data centers in Singapore until COVID hit, and then all of a sudden that supply evaporated. So things change quickly in this industry. Same with Malaysia. Malaysia went through a period where facilities just could not find a single tenant. Now we can't build space quick enough there. So it's cyclical.
Okay, we'll take one last question, Dean. Really overrun the time. So the last question would be to be a data center consultant or manager working for hyperscale data centers, which certification is needed? Is the CDCP sufficient, or should the person move on to CDCS, CDCE, or CTDC?
If I was looking for a role with a consulting company, providing guidance and advice to the industry as a whole, I would look to achieve the CDCE and the CTDC as a minimum. And the reason that I say that is that the CDCE will give you a strong understanding of how these projects are put together from a technical perspective. And then the CTDC will give you a really good understanding of best practice design approaches. So yeah, that's the CDCE and CTDC, and you're going to be armed to the teeth, and would make you a highly attractive prospect for any large consultant who'd be looking for someone with relevant skills. So absolutely. Well, look, thanks for that, Paige, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. Look, I know that there would be a bunch of questions we wouldn't have had an opportunity to get through. Obviously, time's a little bit short. However, if you have got any questions that we didn't get to, feel free to email us, send them through. We will probably respond to these afterwards anyway. Paige always likes to take lists and respond to them, so you will get a response from us. If there's any assistance or guidance you need with anything, please let us know. Either myself or Edward or one of the salespeople is always happy to hop on a call and run through any questions that you've got. I hope that everyone got a bit of value out of today's topic. Again, it's one of those things that I think everyone's feeling quite a bit of pressure with at the moment when it comes to talent in particular. So, yeah, like I said, anything you need, please let us know. Happy to help, and hope you got some value from today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you very much.